But make no mistake, the people of this city have chosen a progressive path.
There's been a big change in New York politics this week with the election of Bill de Blasio as mayor in succession to Michael Bloomberg. It brings in a Democrat in replace of a businessman who's run the city for the past 12 years. With me to discuss this is Shannon Bond of the FT, who's been covering the mayoral race for the past 9 months. Shannon, what do you think New Yorkers have voted for in electing Mr. de Blasio?
Well, certainly it's a historic moment, the first Democratic mayor in more than 2 decades. But in many ways it was a vote for a mayor who could get something done, a mayor who had a big vision. And in that way, it's not unlike his predecessors. Rudy Giuliani was elected in the 90s on a platform of fighting crime at a time when crime in the city was really bad. Mr. Bloomberg, his predecessor, was elected in 2001, shortly after the September 11th attacks, and he really took a vision, a technocratic vision, said he could help rebuild the city stronger than it had been before. And now you have Mr. de Blasio, who really ran on a platform of inclusiveness, of fighting economic inequality, of bringing the middle class into the economic prosperity of the city. And that really resonated with people many of whom have felt left out of the economic boom that's happened under Mr. Bloomberg.
What does it mean in terms of policy changes? I mean, he's said he wants to raise taxes on the rich to fund preschool education. How indicative of that is that of how he's going to run the city?
And he's certainly going to take a different approach than Mr. Bloomberg, who's been, seen as a very business-friendly, friendly to the rich mayor. Mr. de Blasio, as you said, has pledged this tax increase. He's pledged to take a tougher line on Wall Street, on corporate subsidies, to bring economic prosperity to a wider group of people. His ability to actually execute that is a little more up in the air. The tax issue is something actually that he can't decide. That's going to be up to the legislature and the governor in Albany, and they're up for election next year. So it's a little unclear whether or not that'll actually happen, whether Mr. de Blasio will be able to come through on that campaign promise.
So he's a very well-connected, canny political operative, but how good is he as an organizer, as an executive? I think in his last job he had 40 people under him. As mayor of New York City, he's going to have 300,000. That's a huge change. That's right. This will be the biggest job he's ever taken on. He spent decades as a political organizer, as a city council member, and most recently as public advocate, the city's ombudsman. But as you said, the job of mayor is far more prominent. It's a just much bigger job, and it is the biggest thing he'll have to have taken on. So he's going to have to work very closely with a lot of different factions in the city, a lot of different special interests, in a way that Mr. Bloomberg in some ways hasn't had to. His financial independence allowed him to pretty much take his policies and push them through. Mr. de Blasio is going to have to make a lot more compromises and do a lot more wheeling and dealing to help get his policies passed. And in particular, I think he's going to have to talk to the unions, and this is one area where the Bloomberg administration shied off big reform. There's questions of pensions and healthcare rights which need to be addressed. How hard is it going to be for him to do that when he's been very close to the unions all his career? It is going to be a question for de Blasio. He had a lot of union support. He's worked closely with unions through his career. A lot of them supported him in the election, in the primary campaign, and in the general election. He's been playing his cards very close to the chest. He says he's not going to negotiate in public, but he is going to have to sit down at the table and probably drive a hard bargain, because the city doesn't particularly have the financial resources to pay out billions of dollars. Why are business leaders so nervous? Well, they had a real friend in Mike Bloomberg. He came out of the business community. Everyone has a Bloomberg terminal on their desk. He moved in the highest echelons of the city's philanthropic and business community, and people really felt like they had his ear, that he understood their needs, he understood their concerns. Mr. de Blasio doesn't have a history with Wall Street. He doesn't have a particular relationship with the financial community, and so a lot of executives are nervous, and they're nervous about the perceived class warfare of promising to tax the rich. And they're not sure exactly what de Blasio is going to do. But at the same time, experts I've spoken to have said,
You know, he's a pragmatic guy, he's a smart guy, he knows where the economic driver of the city is. So yes, he may kind of bring some of that Occupy Wall Street rhetoric to the campaign trail, but when it comes to governing, you know, he's not going to, you know, close down the industry that really drives a lot of the New York economy.
So exciting but uncharted times for New York City.
Exactly.
Shannon, thank you very much.
Thank you.